This is NDTV. And you're watching NDTV Hindu.
Well, two tales that are developing as we speak and have such high stakes involved. Two stories that have caught the attention of millions. Now, one is the story of an innocent child reaching for a fruit but being offered lead from what we hear by an army officer. Shocking developments these, where the protectors of our lives have turned the villains. Now, our crime correspondent Salim will be joining us with the latest on this story. And of course, the second story is that of the fate of common syllabus. Substandard, poor, atrocious, worthless and hurried were some of the adjectives used by the expert panel while referring to the different aspects of the common syllabus. Now, joining us today to, of course, shed some light on some of these observations by the expert panel is A. Karunanandan, a former panel member of the previous government's Uniform Syllabus Committee. But that's not all. We'll also get you the action from the world of sports, especially the doping menace with the athletics sector. Our sports correspondent Natasha will get us the updates in just a bit. But first, a very good evening and welcome to News Tonight. I'm Ashmit Kumar. Let's take a look at the top stories. Well, highly placed sources confirm that an army officer is a suspect in the Dilshan case. Meanwhile, army says that the guilty will not be shielded. Expert Committee on Common Syllabus calls the textbook substandard, says common syllabus can't be implemented in this academic year.
The Supreme Court has directed the committee to submit a report with regard to the quality of the textbooks.
Amma launches a fresh sales pitch to industry heavyweight, assures a revamp in state infrastructure and bureaucracy.
Very soon, we will be able to make our state a power surplus state once again.
Jayalalitha heads to Delhi with a long list of demands. Power is top on the agenda in the meeting with the Planning Commission. Sun Pictures COO Saxena to be interrogated under police custody for 2 days. The Supreme Court lifts the stay on Justice Dinakaran's impeachment, describes his petition as a delaying tactic. Mercury falls below 2 months average for the second day in a row, thanks to nightly showers, more rains forecast.
It is likely to rain at few places during next 24 hours.
Let's also take a look at stories coming in from across the nation. As the sports minister sacks coaches, an NDTV sting on how chemists outside sports centres stock performance-enhancing steroids. Rahul Gandhi visits Bhatta Parsol, part of his yatra to Aligarh for the Mahapanchayat on land acquisition. Ahead of the cabinet reshuffle, Murli Deora confirms he has offered to resign. Is it an attempt to pave the way for his son? A 17-year-old girl in Haryana is killed by her father after she refuses to stay with a 55-year-old man. Clashes during the Telangana Bandh as Congress leaders now acknowledge that it's time for a discussion on the separate state. Outrage after the health minister calls homosexuality unnatural. Gay activists demand an apology. And every actor has the right to their own comfort zone. Katrina Kaif on her much talked about intimate scene with Hrithik Roshan. Well, first up at this hour in developments coming in from the disturbing Dilshan murder case. From highly placed sources, we have come to learn that army officials have now come on the radar. Now, one of them is being questioned closely. There are reports that the concerned officer is being interrogated by the police. Meanwhile, while the army issued a statement saying that the guilty will not be shielded, they have just revealed that all the weapons and ammunition have been accounted for. Remember now, Dilshan's case was transferred to the city's CBCID and both police and the army were jointly investigating the murder of the teenager on Sunday inside the army compound. Well, of course, joining us for the latest on this one developing story, we have with us Sanjay Pinto, our executive editor, as well as our crime correspondent Salim. They're joining us live via satellite. First up, Sanjay, at this point, again, a very intriguing story, a developing story at that. What are the latest updates on this story?
Well, in fact, the police have relied on both technology and circumstantial evidence to zero in on the possible culprits in this case. Ashmit, very senior officials of the police department, both in the crime branch and the city police, have told us that, in fact, going by the direction from which the shot was probably fired, that they have sort of narrowed down the search for the culprits to one particular block. Now, in this residential complex, 4 army officers reside. But on that given day, at that approximate time, there were only 2 officers present. One, of course, the lieutenant colonel, the other, of course, a retired officer. Secondly, going by the nature of the weapon used probably, because the shot was fired from a high velocity weapon, not probably a pistol or a revolver, but perhaps a rifle. However, the police also point out that in fact, when they combed the area and when they also made a physical check of arms and ammunition on the premises, no arms were found there, indicating that it was probably transferred to an armory just to sort of ward off suspicion. However, the police make it clear that they have not really cracked the case just yet. These are only initial suspicions. Yes, a prime suspect has emerged, and that is the lieutenant colonel, according to our sources, but they want to be very cautious in treading as far as this case is concerned, because it involves a senior officer here, Ashmit, so they don't want to take chances. They also say that going by the movement of the suspect in question, in fact, he moved out of the premises in his car. He also came back there. Also, some reports that suggest a theory about a mobile phone tower that was probably used to track, the signals were used to track the movements of the suspect in question, all in a sense point to the presence of this particular officer there on the premises at that given point in time. However, there are some inconsistencies. We are told that the officer, when questioned, initially denied that he was present. The army also was a little cagey. It's one thing for the army to go on record and say that they are cooperating with the police. How far they have really been cooperating with the police, only the crime branch will actually divulge in a few hours or perhaps in a couple of days. We are also told by our sources that we could expect some sort of arrest by tomorrow. Now, also, as Salim has been telling us, this particular case, the army also had in fact been maintaining all along that none of the guards are armed, have firearms. In fact, they are outsourced private security guards there at that residential complex, and both the army officials have gone on record saying that none of them were armed with weapons, with firearms. Even the police also, I spoke to very senior officials, they also say that in fact the involvement of any guards as such in this could almost be ruled out at this stage. But we'll have to see as to how they actually widen the scope of this investigation. Whether also another very curious aspect here is that the army issued press releases, not 1, not 2, but 3 press releases today, 3 press releases from the army. And of course, the last one was in fact an amended press release where there was an interesting line there towards the end saying that the army says that none of the guilty will be shielded. This is probably after that senior officer was called in for questioning by the crime branch. But for more, let's also go across to Salim. Salim, what have you been hearing going by, in fact, the nature of the injury which caused the death of Dilshan almost instantaneously, although we are told that there were efforts to revive him there by neurosurgeons who were working non-stop to try and save the boy. The shot was probably fired from a distance of about 15 to 20 feet. Now, this also in a sense ties in with the residential complex, the distance between the residential complex and the compound wall where the shot was fired. We are told it was fired with a powerful weapon, as I said earlier, a high velocity weapon. It pierced through the boy's skull, hit a compound wall and then fell on the ground. Have ballistic tests been completed really, because they have recovered the projectile of that particular bullet? What do ballistic tests actually reveal at this stage, Salim?
Yes, Sanjay, sources from the police department do tell us that they have sent it for ballistic report, but however, they have not so far commented on what the tests have revealed. They also say that they are waiting for other tests like a chemical analysis test. However, the police do say that the army initially tried to conceal the evidence, and when the incident happened, the city police were the first to reach the spot, and then hours later the case was transferred to the CBCID. And sources from the city police do tell us that initially it was very difficult for them to get information from the local security guard, as well as the army spokesperson rightly pointed that no weapons were provided to the security guard who were hired from the civilian.
We know that the security guard present at the residential complex Salim, sorry to interrupt. That's a given that the security guard present at that army residential complex was not armed. He did not even have a lathi. That's what the senior officer told me. So that is completely ruled out. Obviously, where did the shot come from? In a complex, in a restricted area like that, clearly some outsider couldn't have gone in, and that would have been a serious security breach. Secondly, what is the motive to kill a 12-year-old, a 13-year-old boy who is merely plucking fruits from a tree? These are unanswered questions really. Has the army come up? The army has also gone on record to say that the ammunition, the arms and ammunition, there was no discrepancy there, everything is accounted for. So where did that bullet come from? Or is this some attempt, according to your sources, made by the army to try and sort of, destroy evidence? Although that's a strong term, we must take care not to jump to conclusions, but anything to suggest that there's some sort of a cover-up operation in this case?
Absolutely, Sandesh. The city police say that they are very worried initially, and the word that they used to describe the operation was the army tried to conceal evidence initially, and then they came forward to actually reveal details to the city police. In fact, the city police have been telling us that the security guard told everything to the city police only later. In fact, the security guard confessed that he was threatened by one of the army men not to convey any information to the city police as far as the investigation is concerned. But later, he came out and he told everything to the city police, and the police say they were initially worried that they were unable to get any details, but as of now they say that the investigation is on the right track and the suspect will be arrested very soon.
Alright, that's interesting. Also, Salim, one must give credit to the Tamil Nadu Chief Minister, who actually from just hours after the incident took place made a strong statement, in fact demanded action against the army officials, also asked the army, written to the government. Her chief secretary wrote to the army headquarters asking for the guilty person to be handed over to the police, saying that it was unacceptable, that in fact the army men ought to have made a different distinction between a small boy and a terrorist. So clearly, right from the top, there has been in fact the go ahead to investigate this case in a fair and fair manner and to bring the culprit to book, no matter how high or whatever positions they may hold. And also, I think there's been excellent cooperation and coordination between the Chennai City Police, which initially investigated the case and then handed it over to the CBCID. R. Shekhar, the CBCID chief there on the spot, as soon as the case was officially handed over to his department, and it seems, going by our sources, that there will be a formal breakthrough in this case, perhaps by noon tomorrow. There could even be an arrest in this case, of course. Whether the army will extend that complete cooperation, they have been saying that they will extend complete cooperation to the police investigating the case, to the local police, the civilian police. Whether there will be any sort of internal inquiry done by the army, we are told that they've also been doing a parallel inquiry into this case, a parallel investigation. Whether they will also process the papers for court-martialing if we must repeat that, underline that, if one of their own officers is found to be guilty. As of now, senior police officials have said that they are pretty close to actually cracking this case, but they are yet not there fully, because they are yet to actually completely conclude that this was indeed the culprit who shot 13-year-old Dilshan. We have to really take care to ensure that we don't jump the gun at this stage, pun completely unintended, that whoever is guilty of this is given a fair trial. But also, we'd like to play out for our viewers the various statements released by the army. The army is not known to be a very open organization for reasons, obvious reasons of course, but the entire army has got into a sort of a shroud of silence. Whether it's a conspiracy of silence or not, only time will tell. How the army has reacted so far. Defense PROs normally call up news organizations asking for coverage, but when the going is tough, then of course they make themselves scarce. But press releases have been coming in from the army. Let's take a look. Bama Devi Rabi brings out the various press releases and the contradictions also in some of them.
A teenager shot dead on a Sunday. But the only weapon carried in this compound does not require bullets, or so they say.
In our colony here, in fact all our colonies here, we do not have any armed guards. Even now, if you go to our main gate and see, the guards are outsourced civilians. They have got only a danda in their hands. They got a stick in their hands. There is no weapon which is authorized to come into any of these colonies. And we have been checking all through. No weapon has been deployed in this colony so far.
After public outrage, the army has been talking to the media, but tried decoding for any nugget on progress of the probe. On Monday morning, in an Army Chief statement, Lieutenant General A.S. Lamba, Vice Chief of the Army Staff, stated, and I quote, "The local station commander made a statement yesterday and there is no armed guard in that area. We are fully cooperating with the civil police and you will know soon." And there was no more of code silence, army style, later on Monday evening. On Monday evening at 3 p.m, an army statement exclaimed that full cooperation is being given to the local police in the joint investigation. The army will take all measures to reach the bottom of the case and take stern action against anyone found guilty. Tamil Nadu Chief Minister Jayalalitha says no one could have mistaken the boy for a terrorist. But the army believes in closing ranks and the latest statement reveals nothing at all. Today, the latest statement from the army says that authorities in Chennai are providing full assistance to CBCID in investigations. Army personnel in the vicinity and the civilian security guard made available for joint investigations. No guilty person will be shielded. Clearly, the rank and file believes in falling in line. And maybe we may all have to wait for Rajkumar Gupta to make his next film titled No One Killed Dilshan. In Chennai with Bama Ravi, Natasha for NDTV Hindu.
Well, clearly we must also point out there was another version from one of the eyewitnesses, one of the two other boys who were present there when the shot was fired, Dilshan's friends. One of them said that they saw a white ambassador car passing through that way. One of the passengers in that car actually shouted out to them, warned them to get off the wall, not to pluck those fruits. But then, we must point out to our viewers that army officers don't usually travel in white ambassador cars. They go in black ambassador cars. We don't want to prejudge anything. We really hope that the army will keep its word and extend all possible cooperation to the crime branch of the Tamil Nadu police, and the culprit will be brought to book. Imagine a 13-year-old boy getting a bullet in the head for merely attempting to pluck fruits. What have we come to in this country, Ashmit?
Right, thanks a lot, Sanjay, for giving us again the multiple dimensions at play in this one developing story. Of course, as you said, we will be keeping a very, very close eye on the way this story develops, and keeping a very close eye on, of course, the way it actually pans out in the coming days. Now, moving ahead. In a meeting with the National Council of the CII, Chief Minister Jayalalitha launched into a fresh sales pitch for investment in the state, with growth and investment both taking a hit in Tamil Nadu in recent years. The new government is only too eager to regain the lost momentum, while conceding that several issues are hurting the industries. Amma assured potential investors that the power crisis situation in the state would be dealt with to help sustain industrial growth.
I am aware of the nervousness in some sections of the corporate sector arising out of some recent unfortunate power cuts. I take this opportunity to assure you that my government is seized of this issue, and we are taking efforts on a war footing to correct the situation. Very soon, we will be able to make our state a power surplus state once again.
Well, it's time now to slip into a very short break. We'll be back with lots more on the other side. Keep watching.